Oh, hello. Wasn't expecting you, so soon. Obviously I'm caught off guard. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Now this is much better. Follow me.
Yeah. Okay. Hello. My name is John Christopher Tierney, and this is the magic of math. You may be asking yourself, what is the magic in math? And that's a very, very special question. But first, I would like to outline what this project aims to achieve. It aims to achieve two things. Firstly, it being a critique and/or information on the public school system and how it impacts people today. And secondly, is to provide informational and educational videos to better educate those who don't really get the concept the first time. Having those two objectives in mind, I aim to currently right now, sitting in my living room, to educate you on the origins of how schools and public schools came about and why public school ultimately harms more than it helps. Firstly, let's talk about where schools came from. Now, the idea of teaching has been something in our human nature since the creation and evolution of us. But the more civilized idea of teaching was actually brought to us by a man named Horace Mann. He, in 1837, actually was the Secretary of Education in Massachusetts, where he spread the word of his idea of this learned advisor teaching an inexperienced student. Throughout history, education has always been moving, changing, ever flowing, ever moving, kind of like a river. Education has always been changing, always been fluid, whether it be new laws, new ways of teaching, or even new technology. Education has always been changing. One of the reasons that I want to focus on today about education changing is Rockefeller's contribution to the entire institution as a whole. Now, during Rockefeller's first steps into becoming the multi-million-dollar man that he is today, during that time, he donated a lot of money to schools and education, even founding his own school, the Institution of Chicago. In today's terms, he donated around $17 billion to education and founding different educational organizations. But on the surface, that seems rather generous and kind. But looking deeper, we can see a more sinister tone in play. Now, Rockefeller and Fredrick Gates both devised a plan to monopolize their industries by creating more workers through the educational system. Fredrick Gates, being Rockefeller's best friend and closest advisor, actually wrote a book on this, and it's very interesting. It is actually titled The Country School of To-morrow. It lines out exactly their way of thinking and what they basically put as their dream. I will play the quote now.
In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk.
Fredrick Gates, in this quote, openly states that he wants people to be like resources and less of an individual person. He says in there that their dream is for people to yield themselves, to become completely docile to their molding hand. And again, we see this blatant disregard for individualism in the next quote.
We are not to raise up from among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for the embryo of great artists, painters, musicians, nor will we cherish even the humbler ambition to raise up from among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply.
Again, we see that Fredrick and Rockefeller don't care about the more educated jobs. We see they don't want to, we won't raise them to be lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen. All of these are learned professions, and yet they don't want to raise the next generation to do those jobs. Rather, they want them to be machines, perfect workers that just go into the factory, work, and then leave. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is a transcript from a very, very learned author, and his name is Norman Dodd. Now, he's a little dry and a little monotone, but I implore you to watch what he has to say. It is very important, and if you don't want to watch the whole transcript, go ahead and go to this timestamp right here. Of course, I will be summarizing it afterwards. I will play the clip.
And they then decide that the key to the success of these two operations lay in an alteration of the teaching of American history. So they approach four of the then most prominent teachers of American history in the country, people like Charles and Mary Bird, and their suggestion to them is, will they alter the manner in which they present this subject, and they get turned down flat. So they then decide that it is necessary for them to do, as they say, build our own stable of historians. They take this 20 potential teachers of American history to London, and there they're briefed into what is expected of them when, as and if they secure appointments in keeping with the doctorates they will have earned. And that group of 20 historians ultimately becomes the nucleus of the American Historical Association. And then toward the end of the 1920s, the endowment grants to the American Historical Association $400,000 for a study of our history in a manner which points to what can this country can it look forward to in the future. And that culminates in a 7-volume study, the last volume of which is, of course, in essence a summary of the contents of the other 6. And the essence of the last volume is the future of this country belongs to collectivism administered with characteristic American efficiency.
Norman Dodd, in his analysis, outlines the fact that the Rockefeller organization first asked 4 learned teachers of the time to alter their curriculum and teaching material. Of course, they turned him down, and then right after, the Rockefeller organization hired and found about 20 new teachers and sat them down in London and told them and outlined what they were to teach. Those 20 teachers and historians that were brought about by the Rockefeller organization became the Historical Association of America, where they would ultimately go about altering the way of teaching forever. Valuing collectivism, which is the direct opposite of individualism, and promoting efficiency of humans. More unskilled workers, more of these workers to then go into factories. But the part that really sucks is that times change. There is less of a need for mindless workers. As technology advances, it's going to be replaced with robotics or even cheaper labor. We're seeing that on a global scale. And of course, that ultimately sets up students that are doing this very classical type of learning at a disadvantage. So, with your knowledge of how schooling came about, I would like to propose 3 problems as well as 3 solutions. The first problem being lack of funding. Many teachers, janitors, staff in schools are very underpaid, almost at the poverty level, which ultimately makes students' learning suffer. As well as the lack of funding towards material like technology, textbooks, stuff of that nature that help students learn are also widely outdated. Secondly is the lack of motivation. Many students, whether it be for a lack of teachers' motivation to teach or a gesture on their background, that students don't want to learn and don't have any enthusiasm to do so. The third problem is that socially, school is a very hectic area. There's many talk about mental health, suicide, bullying, and the stresses of just doing school, many of which are very detrimental to kids who really want to learn. The first and second I would lump together as scholarships become more and more available. Technology like Scholly, the app, become more and more widespread. People will be able to find and secure scholarships for more money and to help them go to college and etc. The more and more this more possible funding opportunities can occur, the more and more funding that can go towards schooling, and the more motivated students will be. The third solution, I would say, is well on its way. Organizations like Be Nice are working diligently to help students identify and fight their mental health. As more information is spread about mental health and suicide as a whole, then more and more we can combat it. So, with this informational video out of the way, I hope you enjoy your stay here in the magic of math.